8:15 in the morning, August 6th, 1945. 29-year-old Tsutomu Yamaguchi steps out of a Mitsubishi company house in Hiroshima, adjusting his eyes to the bright summer morning. He has no idea that in exactly 60 seconds, he will become part of the most extraordinary survival story in human history. No idea that within 72 hours he will experience something no other officially recognized person has ever endured, surviving not one, but 2 atomic explosions. No idea that death itself will hunt him across 300 miles of Japanese countryside, striking twice with the most devastating weapon humanity has ever created. The young naval engineer from Nagasaki is 3,000 meters from the Aioi Bridge in downtown Hiroshima. His 3-month business assignment, designing a new 5,000-ton tanker for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, is finally complete. Tomorrow, he plans to return home to his wife, Hisako, and their infant son, Katsutoshi. But first, one final day at the shipyard. Walking through the streets of Hiroshima that morning, Yamaguchi notices something unusual. The city seems quieter than normal. The usual morning air raid alert has sounded and cleared, as it does most mornings now in the summer of 1945. American B-29 bombers have become such a regular sight that many residents barely glance upward anymore. Hiroshima, surprisingly, has been largely spared from the devastating firebombing campaigns that have reduced Tokyo, Osaka, and dozens of other Japanese cities to ash. Nobody in Hiroshima knows they have been deliberately preserved for something far worse. As Yamaguchi walks toward the Mitsubishi shipyard, he realizes he has forgotten his inkan, his personal seal stamp required for official documents. Frustrated, he turns back toward the company house. This small oversight, this minor inconvenience, will save his life by approximately 900 meters. Had he continued to the shipyard as planned, he would have been 2,100 meters from ground zero, close enough that the coming explosion would have killed him instantly. At 8:14, Yamaguchi is walking through a potato field on the eastern edge of the city. The morning sun beats down on his back. He can hear the distant drone of aircraft engines, a sound so common now that he barely registers it. 1 minute remains. High above, at 31,000 feet, the American B-29 bomber, Enola Gay, has just released a single bomb. It falls for 43 seconds, a 9,700-pound device nicknamed Little Boy. Inside its steel casing, 64 kilograms of uranium await the signal to split apart in a chain reaction that will release the energy of 15,000 tons of TNT. If you're finding this story as gripping as thousands of others have, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the Old Breed channel. Your support helps us continue bringing these incredible, untold stories from history to life. Yamaguchi hears the drone of the B-29 grow slightly louder. He looks up, shading his eyes against the morning sun. He can see the bomber, a silver speck against the blue sky. Then he notices something else, 2 small parachutes drifting down. These are instrument packages, dropped to measure the coming blast. Yamaguchi watches them with mild curiosity. 8:15 and 16 seconds. The sky explodes. Yamaguchi will later describe it as though a massive magnesium flare had been ignited directly in front of his face. The flash is so bright, it temporarily blinds him. So intense it seems to penetrate through his closed eyelids and directly into his skull. The light itself has a quality he has never experienced. Not white, not yellow, but something beyond color, beyond description. In that first millisecond, the temperature at ground zero reaches approximately 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the sun. The heat travels outward at the speed of light. Even at 3,000 meters, the thermal radiation is intense enough to cause severe burns to exposed skin. Yamaguchi has perhaps 2 seconds before the blast wave arrives. 2 seconds of eerie silence after the flash, during which his training as an engineer kicks in. He remembers his naval instruction about air raids. He throws himself to the ground, face down in the dirt of the potato field, hands pressed against his ears, eyes shut tight. The blast wave hits with the force of a 300-mile-per-hour wind. It lifts Yamaguchi completely off the ground, spinning him through the air like a leaf in a hurricane. He lands hard, several meters from where he started, the wind knocked from his lungs. The roar is beyond sound. It is a physical force that seems to compress his entire body. When Yamaguchi finally manages to open his eyes, he cannot understand what he is seeing. The bright morning has turned to twilight. The sky is dark, filled with a strange, oily smoke. Debris falls like rain, pieces of wood, fragments of tile, sheets of paper, some of them on fire. The potato field around him is burning. His exposed skin feels as though someone has poured boiling water over it. He staggers to his feet, disoriented. His left arm and the left side of his face throb with pain. When he touches his face, the skin feels strange, tight and hot. He doesn't realize it yet, but the thermal radiation has given him severe burns. His eardrums have been ruptured by the blast. The world sounds muffled, underwater. Looking toward the city center, Yamaguchi sees something that defies comprehension. Where Hiroshima's downtown once stood, a massive column of smoke and fire rises into the sky. It climbs higher and higher, spreading outward at the top like some monstrous mushroom. The stem of this terrible cloud glows from within with an angry red light. Around it, the entire city appears to be on fire. Yamaguchi begins walking. Though he isn't sure where he's going, his body moves on instinct while his mind struggles to process what has happened. He passes other survivors, many in far worse condition than himself. Some walk in silence, their clothes hanging in tatters, their skin peeling off in sheets. Others sit motionless by the roadside, staring at nothing. The lucky ones are already dead. He needs to find his colleagues. Akira Iwanaga and Kuniyoshi Sato were also heading to the shipyard this morning. Are they alive? The rational part of his mind, the engineer's mind, tells him to head for the company house where they had been staying. It's a logical rallying point. The journey takes hours. Every street is blocked with rubble. Fires rage unchecked. The air itself seems poisonous, thick with smoke and an acrid smell that burns his throat. Several times, Yamaguchi has to detour around areas where the heat is simply too intense to pass. When he finally reaches the remains of the company house, he finds it partially collapsed but still standing. Miraculously, both Iwanaga and Sato are there, alive and relatively uninjured. They had been far enough from the blast to avoid serious burns, though like everyone in Hiroshima that day, they are in profound shock. The three men spend the night in what remains of the house. Outside, the city continues to burn. They can hear screams in the darkness, calls for help that go unanswered. The water mains have burst and there is no way to fight the fires. No medical help for the hundreds of thousands of injured. Hiroshima, a city of 350,000 people, has essentially ceased to exist. The next morning, August 7th, the three Mitsubishi engineers make a decision that seems almost incomprehensible in retrospect. They decide to leave Hiroshima and return to Nagasaki as planned. Their work assignment is complete. Their families are waiting. Whatever has happened here, and none of them truly understand what kind of weapon could cause such destruction, surely it cannot happen again. The journey to Nagasaki becomes its own ordeal. The railway system is in chaos. Trains are packed with survivors fleeing Hiroshima, many bearing horrific injuries. Yamaguchi's burns have begun to worsen. His arm has swollen badly, and the burned side of his face is starting to blister. The pain is constant, throbbing with each heartbeat. They travel through the night of August 7th, stopping frequently as the overwhelmed rail system struggles to cope. By August 8th, they have reached the western part of Honshu. That evening, exhausted and in considerable pain, Yamaguchi finally boards a train that will take him home to Nagasaki. He arrives in his home city late on August 8th. His wife, Hisako, barely recognizes him when he walks through the door. His face is swollen and burned. His clothes are torn and stained with blood and ash. He can barely speak above a whisper. She immediately begins treating his burns with traditional remedies, cooking oil and herbs, while he tries to explain what happened in Hiroshima. But how can he explain something he doesn't understand himself? He tells her about the flash of light brighter than the sun, about the mysterious bomb that destroyed an entire city. Hisako listens but struggles to believe. Surely he must be exaggerating. No single bomb could destroy an entire city. Despite his injuries, despite his wife's protests, Yamaguchi reports to work at the Mitsubishi plant on the morning of August 9th. Japanese corporate culture in 1945 demands nothing less. His supervisor and colleagues gather around him, shocked by his appearance, eager to hear his account of what happened in Hiroshima. At approximately 11 o'clock in the morning, Yamaguchi is in his supervisor's office on the second floor of the main Mitsubishi building. He is struggling to describe the bomb, using his engineering knowledge to estimate its power. His supervisor, Akira Haraguchi, is skeptical. "You're an engineer," Haraguchi says. "Calculate it. How could a single bomb destroy an entire city?" Yamaguchi is trying to explain the impossible scale of the explosion when it happens again. 11:02 a.m. Through the office window comes a familiar, terrible flash of light. For a split second, Yamaguchi's mind refuses to accept what is happening. This cannot be real. Lightning does not strike twice, but his body remembers. Before the blast wave hits, he is already throwing himself to the floor, shouting at others to get down. The second atomic bomb, Fat Man, detonates 1,800 feet above the Urakami Valley in Nagasaki. This plutonium bomb is even more powerful than the uranium bomb dropped on Hiroshima, equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT. The Mitsubishi plant where Yamaguchi works is approximately 3,000 meters from ground zero, almost the exact same distance he had been from the Hiroshima explosion. The blast wave shatters every window in the building. Glass flies like shrapnel across the room. The walls crack and buckle. Desks slide across the floor. Papers swirl through the air like a blizzard. But the building, reinforced concrete construction, remains standing. When the chaos settles, Yamaguchi pulls himself up from the floor. His bandages have been torn away, and his previous wounds are bleeding again. But he is alive. Incredibly, impossibly, he has survived a second atomic explosion. His supervisor, Haraguchi, who moments before had been questioning whether a single bomb could destroy a city, now stands speechless amid the wreckage of his office, staring out at the mushroom cloud rising over Nagasaki. Yamaguchi's first thought is for his family, his wife and son. Are they safe? Their home is in the Nagasaki suburbs, far enough from the city center that they should have been protected. But after what he saw in Hiroshima, he knows that distance means little against such a weapon. The journey home is a nightmare replay of Hiroshima. The same destroyed buildings, the same fires, the same walking wounded. The Urakami Valley, where the bomb detonated, is home to the largest Christian community in Japan and the Mitsubishi Armaments Factory. Both are now gone, vaporized or reduced to rubble. But Nagasaki's geography provides some mercy that Hiroshima's did not. The city is divided by hills and ridges that channel and limit the blast. While the destruction in the Urakami Valley is total, other parts of the city are partially shielded. The death toll, while still horrific at 70,000, is lower than Hiroshima's 140,000. When Yamaguchi finally reaches his home, he finds it damaged but standing. His wife and infant son are alive and uninjured. For the second time in 4 days, he has defied odds that seem impossible. In the days that follow, Yamaguchi's condition worsens dramatically. The radiation exposure from both bombs, a double dose of gamma rays and neutrons, attacks his body at the cellular level. His hair falls out in clumps. He develops a high fever that won't break. His white blood cell count plummets. He vomits constantly and can keep no food down. The burns on his arm become infected, oozing pus that smells of decay. His wife, Hisako, tends to him day and night, not knowing if each day will be his last. Many who were exposed to far less radiation are dying throughout both cities. The Japanese have a new word for this mysterious illness: atomic bomb disease. Western scientists will later call it acute radiation syndrome. But somehow, against all medical probability, Yamaguchi begins to recover. By September, the fever breaks. By October, he can keep food down. By November, his hair begins to grow back. His body, through some combination of genetics, luck, and sheer determination, fights off the radiation poisoning that kills thousands of others. The numbers alone fail to capture the impossibility of his survival. In Hiroshima, anyone within 2,000 meters of ground zero died instantly or within hours. At 3,000 meters, where Yamaguchi stood, the survival rate was less than 50%, and most survivors suffered severe radiation sickness. To survive this once was remarkable. To survive it twice defies statistical probability to an almost impossible degree. For years after the war, Yamaguchi tells almost no one about his experience in Hiroshima. In Japan's post-war culture, atomic bomb survivors, Hibakusha, face discrimination. Many believe, incorrectly, that radiation sickness is contagious. Others see the Hibakusha as reminders of Japan's defeat, living symbols of a war everyone wants to forget. Employers refuse to hire them. Parents refuse to let their children marry them. So Yamaguchi returns to his work at Mitsubishi, now rebuilding tankers for Japan's peacetime economy instead of warships for the Imperial Navy. He says nothing about being in both cities. His official designation is as a Hibakusha of Nagasaki only. But the secret weighs on him. In his dreams, he sees the flash again and again. He wakes expecting to find his skin burning, the world ending in light and heat. He develops a profound hatred of war, of nuclear weapons, of the very idea that such destruction could be considered acceptable. It isn't until the 1950s that Yamaguchi begins to speak publicly about his experience. Even then, he focuses only on Nagasaki. The full truth, that he survived both bombs, seems too incredible to share. Who would believe him? For decades, he lives with this burden. He watches his children grow up healthy, defying predictions that radiation exposure would cause genetic damage. He sees Japan rebuild from the ashes, becoming an economic powerhouse. He observes the Cold War arms race with growing horror, as the United States and Soviet Union build bombs that make little boy and fat man look like firecrackers. Hydrogen bombs 1,000 times more powerful. In his 60s, Yamaguchi begins to feel a responsibility to speak out. The Hibakusha are dying, taking their testimonies with them. Soon, no one will be left who actually saw what nuclear weapons do to human beings. He starts giving talks to school groups, sharing his experience as a Nagasaki survivor, but still, he doesn't mention Hiroshima. It's not until 2005, when Yamaguchi is 89 years old, that he finally applies for official recognition as a double Hibakusha, someone who survived both atomic bombings. The Japanese government is skeptical. They require extensive documentation, witness testimony, proof that he was really in both cities. Fortunately, his colleague Kuniyoshi Sato is still alive and can verify that they were together in Hiroshima. Corporate records from Mitsubishi confirm his business trip. Medical records document his treatment for radiation exposure, consistent with double exposure. On March 24, 2009, at age 93, Tsutomu Yamaguchi becomes the only person officially recognized by the Japanese government as a nijyuu Hibakusha, a double atomic bomb survivor. There were an estimated 160 people who may have been in both cities during both bombings, but Yamaguchi is the only one with fully documented proof. The recognition brings international attention. Documentary filmmakers from around the world want to interview him. James Cameron, director of Titanic and Avatar, meets with him to discuss a potential film. Yamaguchi uses this platform to deliver a simple message: nuclear weapons must never be used again. I experienced the bomb twice, but I survived, he tells audiences. I am living proof that nuclear weapons and human beings cannot coexist. We must choose one or the other. He speaks with particular urgency to younger generations who have never known war. He shows them the scars on his arm that never fully healed, even after 60 years. He describes the silence after the flash, the darkness at noon, the shadows of human beings burned into concrete walls. He tells them about the children who died calling for water, about the rivers clogged with bodies, about the black rain that fell afterward, poisoning everything it touched. But Yamaguchi refuses to express hatred toward America. I don't blame the American people, he says. War makes everyone victims. The pilots who dropped those bombs were victims too. They were following orders, doing what they thought would end the war and save lives. This message of reconciliation, coming from someone with every right to be bitter, proves powerful. He becomes a voice for peace, arguing that the only way to honor the dead is to ensure such weapons are never used again. On January 4th, 2010, Tsutomu Yamaguchi dies of stomach cancer at age 93. His death makes international headlines. The last voice of those who experienced both bombs has been silenced. With him dies the only first-hand account of what it means to face atomic warfare twice and survive. But his message lives on through his children, through the students he taught, through the documentaries and books that preserve his testimony. His son, Katsutoshi, who was an infant during the bombings, continues to speak at peace conferences, carrying forward his father's warning about nuclear weapons. The statistical impossibility of Yamaguchi's survival raises profound questions. Why did he live when so many died? Was it mere chance that he happened to be at just the right distance from both blasts? That his body somehow processed radiation better than others? That he turned back for his forgotten seal that morning in Hiroshima, adding those crucial 900 meters of distance? Some see divine intervention. Others see random luck in a universe of chaos. Yamaguchi himself came to believe he survived for a purpose, to bear witness, to warn humanity about the weapons it had created. Consider the arithmetic of his survival. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima killed approximately 140,000 people out of 350,000, a 40% death rate. The bomb dropped on Nagasaki killed 70,000 out of 240,000, a 29% death rate. To survive both means beating odds of roughly 12%, assuming equal probability. But Yamaguchi wasn't randomly distributed in either city. He was close enough both times to suffer severe burns and radiation exposure. At 3,000 meters from ground zero, his actual odds were far worse. Yet he lived for 64 years after the bombings, reaching the age of 93 when the average life expectancy for Japanese men of his generation was under 70. He fathered healthy children who showed no signs of genetic damage. He maintained his mental faculties until the end, his memory of those terrible days never fading. His story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about nuclear weapons. These are not abstract policy instruments or diplomatic bargaining chips. They are devices that vaporize human beings, that make shadows out of children, that poison the earth for generations. Yamaguchi saw this twice. He felt it burn through his skin twice. He carried its poison in his cells for the rest of his life. Today, 9 nations possess approximately 13,000 nuclear weapons, many of them hundreds of times more powerful than the bombs that nearly killed Yamaguchi. A single modern thermonuclear weapon could destroy a city of millions in seconds. The explosion would create temperatures of 100 million degrees Celsius. The electromagnetic pulse would destroy all electronics for hundreds of miles. The radioactive fallout would poison vast areas for decades. Yamaguchi's survival stands as both a miracle and a warning. A miracle that anyone could endure such devastation twice. A warning about what we are capable of doing to each other, about the weapons we have built that could end civilization itself. He often said that he felt like he was living on borrowed time after August 6, 1945. Every day after that first flash was a gift, a responsibility, a burden. He used that borrowed time to build tankers that helped rebuild Japan's economy, to raise a family that brought new life into a world that had seen too much death, to speak truth about weapons that most of us prefer not to think about. In his final years, Yamaguchi would end his talks with a simple question. What kind of world do you want to leave for your children? For him, the answer was clear. A world without nuclear weapons. A world where no one would ever again experience what he experienced twice. The last double Hibakusha is gone, but his question remains. In a world with enough nuclear weapons to end human civilization many times over, it's a question we cannot afford to ignore. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about nuclear weapons and the people who survived them, please share it with others who need to hear it. Subscribe to the Old Breed channel. We're committed to preserving these vital stories from history that must never be forgotten. And we want to hear from you in the comments. Did you know that anyone survived both atomic bombs? What aspects of Yamaguchi's story surprised you the most? Your engagement helps these important historical accounts reach more people who need to understand what previous generations endured and overcame. The man who survived 2 atomic bombs spent his borrowed time trying to ensure no one would ever need to survive even one again. In honoring his memory, we honor all the Hibakusha all the victims of war, and commit ourselves to the cause of peace. Tsutomu Yamaguchi beat impossible odds twice. Now it falls to us to beat the odds against our own self-destruction, to choose the future he fought for. A world that has finally learned that nuclear weapons and human beings cannot coexist.